Silence unknown callers. Allow unknown callers. History. Notes. Stream Deck. Soundtrack. A super cool, informative video about using vocal shortcuts in iOS 18. Alright, maybe you're familiar with these new vocal shortcuts in iOS 18, or maybe not. Either way, I want to walk you through the process of getting started with creating them and using them effectively. Also, some nifty ideas for going beyond the basics, the pros and cons of using vocal shortcuts, and lastly, some tips and tricks for getting the best results. So, what even are these new vocal shortcuts? Well, vocal shortcuts are a new accessibility feature in iOS 18 that allow you to assign custom voice phrases to perform specific actions or run shortcuts on your Apple device. To create a vocal shortcut, simply go to Settings, Accessibility, Vocal Shortcuts. First of all, if this feature is not toggled on, which it probably isn't if you're brand new to this, then simply toggle it on. I obviously have a long list here of vocal shortcuts that I've already created, so I need to scroll down a bit to create a new one. But if you've never made one of these, well, just tap Add Action, then tap Continue. Now for me, I've created tons of regular shortcuts, not vocal shortcuts, over in the Apple Shortcuts app. Hence, I have a long list of all those here. But if you've never used the Shortcuts app before, you're probably just seeing the defaults that Apple provides you here, which are some items grouped as either System or Accessibility. There's definitely some useful basic actions here under System, so if you're an absolute beginner to all this, you may just want to start there. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to demo some of the niftier shortcuts that I've built over in the Shortcuts app. In a minute, I'll showcase some of the cooler, more advanced vocal shortcuts I've already made, but just to show you how to create a new vocal shortcut from scratch, let's go with Open Drops, which is the language app that I use to study German. And there's a reason why I'm choosing this one as a prime example, which you'll see in just a second. So I choose Open Drops from the list of my shortcuts. Next step is to assign the actual phrase that you'll speak in order to open the Drops app. The cool thing is, this phrase can literally be anything, like mumbo jumbo or cacao.
Cacao.
Since I've been using this Drops app specifically to learn German, I'm going to go with the word German. So you type in German. Now, be ready to speak before you hit go, because you're immediately going to be asked to speak your phrase 3 times to lock it in. Before you do this step, some quick tips. First, turn off the TV or any background music that may be playing in the room. Basically, you want the room to be as silent as possible so it can record clean audio of you speaking the phrase. Secondly, don't try to say it too loudly or emphatically, and don't exaggerate saying the phrase, and don't say it super slow in a remedial way, but rather just speak it the way you'd normally speak it later when you want to actually utilize the vocal shortcut. And lastly, you'll see a back button at the top left, so if you feel like you screwed up any of your 3 recordings, just tap that to come back to the current screen here, and then you can try your phrasings again. All right, so let's tap go, and I'll say my phrase 3 times. Be sure to only start speaking when it prompts you to do so. And that's pretty much it. You've just created your first vocal shortcut. So now, to test it out. German.
Etwas ausgezeichnet.
Okay, so that's cool, but a couple things to keep in mind as you consider starting to use vocal shortcuts. It doesn't always successfully register you saying the phrase, so after you try a few times unsuccessfully, I'm not gonna lie, it'll get super frustrating. So if there are certain apps that you're constantly opening, I recommend adding shortcut buttons to those on your lock screen or on your first home screen. In an upcoming video, I'll walk you through my ultimate lock screen where I created launchers for pretty much every app that I use repeatedly throughout the day. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, because you do not want to miss that one. But for now, this video is all about vocal shortcuts So I'll stay on target.
Stay on target.
In general, vocal shortcuts work best for people who live and work alone and are in quiet environments. So if you're in loud, bustling locations or you've got coworkers and other people around you constantly, you probably don't want to annoy them by talking to your phone all day.
You're annoying me.
All that being said, what I really recommend using these vocal shortcuts for are highly specific tasks. Things that are buried a little underneath in your phone settings and systems and, otherwise things that would cost you a lot of time to go looking for. Essentially little mini workflows you can trigger by speaking a quick phrase. When vocal shortcuts work as they should, it's godlike. So let's get into some more advanced examples of how I'm using vocal shortcuts. Most of these are using some rather advanced shortcuts that I built over in the Shortcuts app. Now, in the interest of keeping this video from getting super long, I'm not going to get all into the details of how I built all those, but of course, subscribe to the channel and I'll walk you through all that in upcoming videos. Okay, so first off, check this one out. When NFL games are on, I want live score updates because I have been known to bet.
From time to time.
The ESPN app is great for that, but problem is if you leave notifications on all the time, they end up bothering you. Like some player that just signed an $800 million contract or Joe Schmo got arrested last night. I
don't give a shit about that.
So I wish there was some quick way to just toggle notifications on and off for the ESPN app. Typically, this is what I'd have to do before and after any time an NFL game is on. Go to settings, scroll down to apps, go find the ESPN app, tap on notifications, and then toggle that on or off. Super annoying to have to keep doing all of that several times a week. So instead, I set up a shortcut in the Shortcuts app, which I now trigger with a vocal shortcut. I simply say NFL anytime, and it'll immediately bring up the notification settings for the ESPN app. Super sweet. NFL. Now's also a good time to let you know that you can actually assign multiple phrases for vocal shortcuts to perform the same task. Initially, I set up the phrase ESPN settings to jump to those notification settings, but that's 6 syllables. And I found that vocal shortcuts is less successful at identifying your phrase if your phrase is too long, or too short for that matter, like only one short syllable. For optimal results, I recommend that you use phrases that are between 2 to 4 syllables. But just to show you that either phrase will work for me, I left in ESPN settings as a separate vocal shortcut. So even though I'll most often just say NFL, if I ever forget that and accidentally say ESPN settings, well, that should work too. ESPN settings. Oh, and if you're wondering why I don't just say ESPN to bring up its notification settings, well, I actually set that up as a separate vocal shortcut altogether, where whenever I say ESPN, it actually opens up the ESPN app itself, not the notification settings within system settings for the ESPN app. ESPN. All right, another nifty example. If I want to search for something specifically on YouTube, yes, I could go to the YouTube homepage and do a search there. But all too often, YouTube's algorithms tempt me with their thirst traps. And the next thing I know, I forgot what it was that I wanted to search for in the first place. So as a means of bypassing this problem, I set up a vocal shortcut where I just say YouTube search, and it brings up this little search overlay. So I type in corgi, and voila. It instantly opens up the YouTube app with my search results. Thirst traps bypassed. And God, I want a corgi so bad. Seriously, I can't imagine getting mad at anybody or anything if I had a corgi with me. Just so friggin' cute.
Me a paw? Just one paw. Okay, keep. Oh my God.
And once again, I just want to mention that I created 2 separate vocal shortcuts that link with the same shortcut from the Shortcuts app. So by saying YouTube search or search YouTube, either way works. And one last example for now, again, just to get you curious and inspired for all that can be done with vocal shortcuts. For this one, I simply say, send screenshot. And it takes a screenshot of whatever's on my phone at the moment, and then opens up messages to text that screenshot to a friend. You may have noticed that there was a delay before the screenshot was taken. I did this intentionally when building the shortcut in the Shortcuts app. See, thing is, whenever you activate a vocal shortcut, there's this little overlay that appears which visibly notifies you that the vocal shortcut worked. I can see how in most cases that's a good thing, but it's not good when you're trying to take a screenshot because that little overlay will appear in your actual screenshot. I determined that the overlay disappears after 4 seconds. Hence, I added an initial 4-second delay in the shortcut before the screenshot is taken. All right, I could go on with more nifty examples of how I'm using vocal shortcuts, but this video really is just about getting you started with using them. Not just the basic setup, but I wanted to get you a little excited and thinking about creative ways you could use these vocal shortcuts to save a lot of time while using your phone. If you want to see more vocal shortcut examples and also some deep dives into mastering Apple's Shortcuts app for some really cool automations, well, you know what to do. But hey, before we call it a day here, I want to give you a complete sense of what using vocal shortcuts will entail. So let's quickly run through the pros and cons so you can better decide if these vocal shortcuts truly are for you. First, the pros. With vocal shortcuts, I love that you no longer have to say Siri. Honestly, I always kind of hated having to say, "Hey Siri," and then waiting for her to get ready to accept your inquiry. I think it was about a year ago when they changed it to only having to say Siri instead of Hey Siri. But now you can bypass that altogether and get straight into your vocal commands. I also love that the phrase you use doesn't actually have to match the name of the app you're opening or the shortcut you're running. It can literally be anything. So maybe have some fun with it. Clam chowder.
What's the password? New England clam chowder.
Or for example, I still call it Twitter, even though the app is called X now. So I can just say Twitter and it'll open up the X app. I should tell you that it's very good at not doing the thing if it picks up you saying the magic phrase in the middle of your everyday normal speaking. For example, App Store versus I went to the App Store the other day. Also, there's an understated layer of security here too, in the sense that only your voice can perform these commands. If somebody else tries to say any of your commands, it shouldn't work. And now for the cons. Bear in mind that if you turn on vocal shortcuts, you'll always see the orange dot since your phone is constantly listening for your commands. So if you decide to turn on vocal shortcuts, this will likely lead to increased battery use. So if you're already struggling to keep your phone alive for a full day without charging, you may not want to use this feature, even though it's pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Secondly, you can't actually edit a vocal shortcut after you've made it. You'd have to delete and recreate from scratch. Thirdly, if you've created a super long list of vocal shortcuts, as I've done, in order to create a new one, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the list. Come on, Apple. There should be a plus button up top to create a new vocal shortcut. And fourthly, privacy concerns. Well, at least according to Apple, audio is processed on device. So at least there's that promise. Now, whether you choose to believe them or not, well, that's up to you. And like I mentioned earlier in this video, vocal shortcuts does not have a 100% success rate in recognizing your phrases, which can quickly get super frustrating.
I'm mad! Ah!
It can be rather temperamental, and sometimes it's just not super responsive. Whenever that happens, I'd recommend going back into the setup and toggling the vocal shortcuts off. Exit out of here for a second, come back, and then toggle it back on. Wait for the orange dot to reappear, and then try your phrases again. Not perfect, but it tends to improve the situation. Also, one note, make sure you don't have any other apps open that are actively seeking the attention of your mic. Oh, and one more thing. Bear in mind that when you're creating a new vocal shortcut, when you're searching through your existing shortcuts, you should know that for some dumb reason, the search is case sensitive. So for example, if you have an Apple shortcut called Apple Maps, capital A, capital M, if you start typing Apple Maps in all lowercase in the search field, that shortcut will not appear in the list to choose from. Anyway, that wraps up the pros and the cons and my overall presentation of Apple's new vocal shortcuts feature in iOS 18. By the way, not only is this feature available on your iPhone, but it's also available for iPads and apparently even macOS Sequoia, which is really cool. How you can set various phrases to do specific things on all your Apple devices. I've shown you just a few examples today of how I've started using vocal shortcuts on my iPhone, but as mentioned earlier, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more advanced examples of vocal shortcuts, both for iPhone and iPad, and eventually macOS Sequoia. Also, I'm going to start doing some deep dives into the Apple Shortcuts app, which really, in order to get the most out of vocal shortcuts, you should be good with Apple Shortcuts. In addition to showing you how to build shortcuts from scratch, in the coming weeks, I'll start making some of these more advanced shortcuts available for download, so be sure to join my free Substack if you're interested in that. Plus, all kinds of goodies and tips and tricks I'll be sharing with you guys. All right, if you've gotten any value from this video, click like down below and hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions about vocal shortcuts at all, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll see if I can help clarify whatever needs clarifying. All right, see you in the next video.
What to watch next?